This is Canada Reads American Style, featuring two friends who love Canada Reads and Canadian literature. Welcome our host Rebecca from Michigan and Tara from Ontario.
Hi, everyone. It is day 2 of CBC's Canada Reads Competition 2022, and we are really excited. Tara and I are really happy to invite or to have with us today, I should say, Jolene, who is Bookworm Adventure Girl on Instagram as well as YouTube. And this is a woman who produces more videos. I don't know how she does it because I'm retired and she's working full time. I don't know how she does it. But anyway, Jolene, welcome to our program this evening.
Thank you so much. It's great to be with you, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Great. So what we're going to do today, it was a wild day. I think there were some things that sort of surprised me, but our questions that we're going to talk about tonight are: what do you think of the criticisms that were made about the remaining 4 books, and how do you think their defenders handled the criticisms? And we will start with and go in the order they did on the panel today, which is starting with Washington Black. So Tara, we're going to let you kick us off.
Okay. I think basically the main critique right off the bat came from Turek. Like no holds barred. I think he called it artless, boring, disjointed, and that it was not vivid in description. Like Mark, I totally disagreed with everything Turek said. Like, good for him. Like, he was I appreciated what he was doing. He was going for it, but I think he was wrong. Mark obviously thought he was wrong, and I think after the initial surprise, he handled it like the pro that I knew he was when it came to defending his book. He just laid it out there.
Yeah. Was your mouth hanging open when he said all those things? Because mine was.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I loved the moment actually when Mark thought that Turek first called it heartless.
Yeah.
And then he was like, no, artless. And then Allie was like, well, I think that's even worse.
I agree. Well, it's funny because for me, that surprise. Do you want to talk about anybody else besides Tarek's? Do you want to say anything about Christian or Malia?
I think my other one that I wrote notes that I have written down here were Christian, that he wanted a happy ending. And I was like, I don't know if you can have a happy ending in that book. You can have because Mark described it as a journey of the self. You can have the journey, and how can you also have an ending when he was only 18 at the end of the book or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I also thought that was an odd criticism of the book, because I don't think you can have a happy ending. It continues. It's a journey itself, the book.
Yeah. For me, yeah, I think I just thought, Tarek is such a lovely man and he has such a beautiful heart and everything. I've watched his TED Talks, I interviewed him. He just exudes compassion and kindness. So I really totally 100% think that was strategic. I think he was trying to just take a good stab at Washington Black, because I think maybe in his mind Mark was an incredible debater, and I think that's what he was trying to do, was just go for the throat and try to just hit him with it. So because I just can't believe he really truly meant all of those things. So I think it's just strategic and competitive. And the thing that Christian said that kind of, I thought about this in a different way. He said, yeah, the whole, this whole build up to getting to Titch, and then Titch didn't give Wash an answer. And I said, I know, but if you think about it, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. Everybody was there to help Dorothy, right? But at the end of the day, it was she had the power all along, right? She was supposed to tap her shoes together to get home. And so even though there were all these other characters that were supposed to be pivotal to help her get home, it was within herself all along. So I sort of feel like that's how I would have answered that criticism from Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like you, Rebecca, I absolutely think it was strategic, and good on him. Like Tarek was gunning for Washington Black, as well as Mark was gunning for what Strange
Yeah.
Paradise. So the two of them, and I think, they both, I think they recognized that in each other, and so they kind of saw each other as their strongest competition, and so that's what you do, right? So I actually, even though, yeah, I didn't agree, same as you, Tara, I didn't agree with what he was saying, and yeah, my mouth definitely dropped, when he said what he said, but I understood why he was saying it. And I think that, like, I've been really impressed by Mark. I think he's, one of the best defenders that I've ever seen on Canada Reads, period, let alone, this debate this year. But I thought he handled it well. Like, he didn't take it personally. He went back to the book, and I think that that's really important to say. But what about these things in the book?
Yeah.
So I've really appreciated that as well. And the Christian's comment about it being, um, about the ending. I was watching JL Richardson earlier today, and she made some very good points about, we want a book to be a certain way, but that is not the writer's job to make the book the way we want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? She didn't say it quite that way. She said it much more eloquently. But basically, like, people have been saying we wanted a different ending, we wanted there to be hope, we wanted all of these things. But that is not the story that the writer is telling. So our job as the reader is to ask ourselves why we want those things and why we felt uncomfortable with it. And I think maybe that's not, the best, uh, not a defense, but maybe that's not the best critique, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's to say, well, this is what I wanted from it and it didn't have it. It's to talk about what is there
Yeah.
and what was good and what was bad in what is actually there. I think that would be a stronger case, which I think is, for the most part, what Mark is doing, except that he talked about, no hope in the one book, but we'll get there. Yeah.
Okay, I was going to say I did like that Mark's response to the ending was that life doesn't wrap up, which I guess was kind of what it, but he said it much better than I did, that you can't have an ending when life is continuing, right? So I thought that was a great defense that he had for the ending too.
Yeah, and it's funny too because if I had a choice, in fact, I answered a quiz recently where it said, "Do you like a neatly tied up ending or an open ending?" And I'm going to take an open ending every time because I want to. It's kind of like small game hunting. That
Mhm.
when we talked to the defender, or a couple, what is he? A couple years ago now, last year, I don't remember actually, but she even said, I told her, I said, well, this is how I thought it ended. And then she said, isn't that interesting? That's how she either did or didn't at the beginning, or I don't remember exactly. But the point is, I want an ending that maybe I, as the reader, get to decide what I need, right? Whether it's hope or despair, whatever I
Yeah.
need or want at the end, I'm going to see that because Tara and I were talking too, that, people were saying that Washington Black ended where he goes off on his own. And I went, what? Wait, and I went back and reread it and she and I discussed it. And it's like, no, I don't think that's what happened. But I do, again, I just never thought it was an open ending. I sort of felt like, no, this is what happened to Wash after this. So anyway, it's just kind of interesting. So I agree. I don't like a nice tight little bow on the end for me personally. So, okay. So let us move to Five Little Indians.
Right.
And let's see, I was just kind of looking over the critiques, and Tarek said he didn't really lose himself in the book, and Malia and actually Suzanne just really never had a criticism. I re-listened to it, and I thought she actually never really had a criticism. And Malia said that some of the characters weren't really fleshed out, and Mark said the setting wasn't really described, and the characters were not necessarily defined. Which again, I didn't agree with any of that. I thought the characters were very fleshed out. The one thing also that Mark said was that they were too likable. And I thought, I think it's about the competition, right? But I didn't even think that was a valid criticism because I think they were all human. If people had gone through this trauma and they came out of it and they were living their lives and some things were good and some things weren't so good, but I didn't think any of those criticisms were valid. So I'm just going to leave it there because I think they're going after what I think is potentially the winner. That's
Yeah.
how I feel now. Because I think Christian is kicking ass. I
He
mean,
is.
he has this really gentle way about him, but he is very firm in what he's saying and he's very clear about it. And he's been my biggest surprise of the competition so far.
Yeah, I think it's very obvious that Christian is gunning for Malia, like, well, not for Malia herself, but
Yeah.
for Scarborough. And I think that those are like the two more, well, especially now with only three of them left. But the thing that Malia said, she said something about um, that her criticism with that book was that she wanted to, like she said, she reads for escapism, and that
Mm.
she wanted to escape to the escape. And I thought that was really interesting. And I thought, but that's, if I was Christian, the person, not the faith, if I was Christian, I would have said, like, that's the whole point of the book. You can't escape from this, and neither can they. My response would have been to kind of go right back to her and be like,
Mhm.
that's the whole point. That's what makes it a great book, is that these people haven't been able to escape from what they've been trying to escape from. Even when they escaped the residential schools, they actually did not escape from anything, and they're still in it. That's the whole point. And as a reader in that book, you're in it. So I was kind of hoping for a little bit more pushback on that, and instead, I think the two of them are kind of going, well, your characters aren't well developed, well, your characters aren't well developed, well. And I was kind of like, no, you could go deeper here, you could really make a case. So I mean, it was still fine, but I thought it could have been a little bit stronger. Yeah.
That's a really good point. I like what you just said. That's actually, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't either, because I kind of had the same, once you described that, Jolene, I kind of had the same reading experience. Like, I remember when I started the book, I can't remember exactly the number of chapters. I'm going to say the first 5 or 6 that had to do with a lot with Maisie and Maisie's story.
Okay.
I remember thinking, I don't know if I can get past this. Like, I don't know if I can get through this book, and that I was going to need like a lighter read to read at the same time. And generally, I'm a one book person at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you read it and you get through it, which is kind of what the characters are doing. You're right. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's not an easy read for sure. It's a tough
No.
topic, but the thing is, going into this competition, they're all tough, right? Like, this is the first year that I think they've done trigger warnings, even though there's been books in
Yeah.
the past that have had some heavy topics. And Ali talked about that when we were interviewing him, saying that they're all heavy topics. And so these aren't going to be light, fluffy reads with a nice, bow at the end and happily ever
Yeah.
after kind of things. And I think going into a competition like this, to take it seriously, you need books that have that kind of meat.
Yeah.
And so I think there's still opportunity though for there to be deeper discussion around those, in tomorrow's debates. So
Yeah. I thought, though, Christian, each critique, he faced each one and handled it really well. Because, like you said, Tarek was that he didn't lose himself. And then Christian was like, well, you're not supposed to. It's not meant to be a transportive reading. Like, you're not supposed to lose yourself in it. And with Malia, with the hopelessness, then he gave examples of hopefulness, even if it was just that a character bought a house or had a dog. You know what I mean? Like, and as for Mark, he mentioned the setting, that the setting didn't stick with him. I would argue that myself with him, because I have images stuck in my head of where they were in East Vancouver, and I have never been in Vancouver.
oh, interesting. And Suzanne, who, she was very strong about
Oh
how
yeah.
much she felt that she was there, and she knew
Yeah.
what they were talking about and things. So I was kind of surprised that that was a critique, actually, and that she kind of gave that a bit of a boost, because I thought she just talked about how well she knew the area and what that was like and how she felt like she was in the place. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I actually have Suzanne written down in my notes as Five Little Indians' second defender, because she was like, I don't think she had a critique for it. She was just,
Yeah.
and I loved her description of her reading process for it. It was, yeah. So I have her as like, she is up there with Christian. If he missed something, she popped right in there and covered it. So
She did. I was actually very impressed with Suzanne today. Like, I know she no longer
Yeah.
has a book to defend, but I actually was more impressed with her today than yesterday.
I want to agree with that because I thought she was so eloquent, and I thought that the she went really dug deep for the things she wanted to say about each book, and I love that she did say what she liked, really loved about the books,
Mhm.
and then did throw in some, some minor, really minor criticisms of them. So I think she did a super job. But the one thing I want to go back to about the setting, I've lived in large cities like Los Angeles, Bay Area, etc. And for me, I did not setting for me was not an issue at all because I felt like I knew that setting. I worked with people who are houseless for many, many years, and every day, had situations that we had to kind of work through. So I really felt that setting to me, even though I've never been to East Vancouver, it really resonated with me. So I felt it was very familiar to me. So anyway,
Hmm. Hmm. Are we ready to move on to Scarborough?
yeah, I think
All
we
right,
are.
let's do it. So a lot of the criticisms for Scarborough were around, the characters either not being well developed or developed enough, I guess I should say, and also I forget who it was that said it, but said like at one point, there's like all of a sudden 8 or 9 characters kind of thrown in, and which uh Malia did say, like, yeah, she said that was true. And so I thought that was interesting, and I also thought it was interesting that Christian made the comparison between Five Little Indians and Scarborough, saying that both books are kind of a magnifying glass on these characters, on a place in this community, and then and then had his own critiques, and I actually thought that Malia did a great job this today. I again, I liked her better today than yesterday. She had some good responses to the criticism, but I actually liked, and the other criticism that I wanted to mention to you, sorry, I forgot about this one, and this is the one that kind of piqued my curiosity today, was when they were talking about the manager or supervisor, and that the emails back and forth didn't seem real. And again, my critique for this, and I just kept thinking the critiques could be just a little bit stronger, um, was, that's kind of the whole point of, like, I loved the structure of this book. It's one of the reasons that I rated it so high. I thought it was so well done. Um, and that whole thing about, trying to get food for these young people, and the person who is not even there, doesn't even know these people, right? To them, they are people on a piece of paper that are making them money. And so why should we be spending the money that we could make, to feed them, kind of thing? And so I'll just send you this email and tell you all of these things. They're so far removed from it. And
Hmm.
that's why it seemed so real to me, because I have been in circumstances where that has been the case. You're trying so hard in the front line to do your job and to help people, but the people higher up, the people who don't have contact with these people all the time, have no clue what that is like and aren't actually helping. And I thought it was so real, and I thought the way that was brought into the story was fantastic. And I don't know, Malia might not have those kind of life experiences yet. I don't know. But I just thought that was an opportunity to be like, actually, this is pretty real. And this is what I think what they're showing instead, instead of just, I felt with this one, it was a lot like the characters aren't well developed and they were kind of going back and forth, which,
Yeah.
there might be some truth to that. I don't know. I didn't feel that. I really enjoyed this book and I loved the characters.
Yeah, I kind of agreed with the critique about the underdeveloped characters, and even more so that there were sometimes too many that and they just so briefly appeared that I didn't really get a sense of them. So overall, I agreed with the critique, except when it came, although with Miss Hina, I loved her.
Yeah.
I thought she was my favorite character.
Hmm.
And I did appreciate the email scenario that was set up for the reason that you said, Jolene. So I think their critique of the email supervisor was unwarranted because the email automatically puts her at a distance from the story. So, like, how can there would be no character development for that
Right.
character anyways because of the distance that's automatically involved. So That one I thought was unwarranted. And then I thought Malia did a good job. She brought it all back around to community, which is what her book hinges on. And then she did bring up the character of Corey. I think she said Mark brought up Corey, but she proved her point, because if you, Catherine Hernandez can make you feel empathy for a character like Corey, then she actually has done something to develop the character, right? Like if he was very two-dimensional, I would not know his story and I would not have any empathy for him as a father. I didn't like him, but I had a sense for his background and what brought him to where he is at that moment. So I thought Malia did a good job for that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say, she really impressed me today, because yesterday, like I had said in our podcast yesterday, I felt like she kind of said the same thing a few times, and there wasn't a lot of necessarily sort of insight that I was looking for. First day is always difficult anyway, but I thought she was the weakest link a little bit. But today I thought she was stellar. Like her statement that she wrote out, all of her responses to the critiques were really amazing. I thought what she said about the other books was really strong. So she really impressed me today. So good on her.
Yeah.
And interestingly, Tarek said, he said it was clunky writing, which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
And again, I think he was just being strategic, honestly.
Yeah.
And then he said, and I tried, no one questioned him. And I thought, did I hear what I thought I heard? He said the pace, I thought he said was atrocious. But then I thought,
That's
I
what I heard.
can't imagine if he meant that word. Did he mean that word, do you think?
I heard that
that's
too.
what I heard. And
Okay.
yeah.
So again, I think it's just being strategic. So and then nobody brought it up. So I thought, okay, well, I thought that's what I heard, but that was a little weird. But the other thing, so I agree about the characters, because I had said after yesterday when Christian made that comment the first time, that's when I said, oh, that is what hit me about that book, which I couldn't put my finger on, because I loved it. I gave it 5 stars, absolutely loved the book. However, I had to keep going back and looking up the characters' names and go, wait a minute, who is this person again? And for some reason, I couldn't keep it straight. And I was like, what? I don't like, why am I having trouble with this book? I don't get it. So that is, for me, that was a little bit kind of oddly difficult for me for some bizarre reason. But here's the thing that no one has talked about. And I know I read it, so I just don't know why no one else has said this. But what I loved that Catherine did, the author, is that it wasn't just, what was it, Corey? Is that the dad's name, who was a horrible racist and like a white supremacist? If there were other times in the book when one person of a different identity than someone else actually showed their own, like they were believing the stereotype of the other person. So in other words, it wasn't just one person that, or one type of people that were being targeted as being the racists or the bad people. Everybody, I thought what she showed was that no matter who we are when we live together in diversity, somebody might have a prejudice about, or a perception of someone else that's untrue, but it all plays out. Do you guys remember that at all in the book? Because I swear I'm going to go back and highlight those sections.
Yeah, when you talk about it like vaguely, I don't think I would have been able to pinpoint that right now and say this happened, but
Yeah. And I can't even remember like who the people were, because I think they were really side characters. But when she did it, I thought, wow. And I even put that on my Instagram post about the book, was that she really showed in a very subtle way that we all bring, our stereotypes of other people or other cultures or whatever. It's just that Corey was the biggest example of it, right? He was the one that was in your face.
right.
So I swear I'm going to go back and look in that book and highlight it and then show it to everybody.
So the idea being that the others are mostly, it's more subtle. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it still shows though that, in other words, and I know this is going to sound horrible when I say it, and I don't mean it the way it's going to come out, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's not just because he was a white supremacist that he was the only one who had horrible perceptions of other people. Like I think there were families that didn't like that Miss Hina wore like a hijab or something. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
yes.
And there
Yeah.
was that little hint of it where you go like, "Oh, okay, well, that's who she is. That's her identity, that's her culture, etc." But it was done in a way that was just so light that I thought, I love that she showed that we all carry those things in our heads sometimes, right? We all have our issues, no matter who we are. We might have some of those types of issues. I got that out of the book, but no one's ever mentioned it. So I swear I'm going to go back, like I said, and find it and point it out.
It would be great
Yeah.
if that is used as we get, tomorrow or the next day, to make a very strong case.
Is this the book that had the young guy that was also the artist, the graffiti artist in
Hmm.
it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I see where you're coming from
Yeah, that's
actually,
right.
Rebecca.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah, they were stereotyping him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's an example of it. Yeah.
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 Because I loved his story, which was only a very small part of the book, and it was at the beginning when you heard his story. But I loved his story. Yeah,
Hmm.
he was
Yeah.
the graffiti artist that and lost his scholarship and everything.
And there were also really minor characters that may have only been mentioned one time, but again, they were putting their stereotype of somebody else out there. Like you heard their voice in a way.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm saying. It was very subtle, but I thought she made that point overall, which that's what, to me, that's what I love most about the book, was that she was really saying we all have to get our act together.
Right.
Like we
Yeah,
can't keep looking at each other and judging each other. That was kind of what I
yeah,
got out of it. So, okay.
yep. Oh, good point.
Okay.
Okay,
Uh-oh.
I know.
I feel really bad that Tara has to kick this off now.
Jolene, I don't know. This was my book of
I
choice.
know
This
it
was the
was.
one I was really going for. But I was it this morning, Rebecca, or was no last night after we finished talking. You asked me who I thought, and I did tell her I think that what I thought What Strange Paradise was going to be voted out today. So I was a little prepared for it because Mark was targeting it. He put it out there yesterday, and I was like, oh damn, like he's going for it, and yeah. So I found their main critique, especially that of Mark's, was that it was not hopeful and the ambiguous ending. Tarek did not defend it well,
Right.
and if he was, what he should have done is brought it back around to Mark, because Mark basically defended it himself when he said life doesn't wrap up and be comfortable with the
Mhm.
uncomfortable. I'm like, Tarek could have used Mark's words, thrown it back at him, and bam, done. But yeah, and then I have a whole bunch of other thoughts on the book, but that's okay. That's, that Tarek could have used. But that was my main one, is that Mark set it up for him and he didn't use it.
Okay. I want to jump in and I'm going to
Okay.
make Tara go again because I'm going to make a statement here and then I'm going to
Okay.
also have Tara speak about this. But this is a huge spoiler alert. So this cannot be a bigger spoiler alert. And I often wonder if one of the reasons this book is not being defended or discussed very well is because people don't understand some of the things that Omar was trying to do with the book. And so I'm going to 100% spoiler. Okay. So
Full of Suzanne, because she's been doing it the last 2 days. I love it.
Yes.
yeah. Okay. So here's the thing. When the book opens, there are two quotes. There's one from an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, which is a classic American short story by Ambrose Bierce that was written like in the late 1860s, I think. And then there's also a quote from Peter Pan, that's the part I'm going to have Tara talk about in a second. But the thing about an occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge, when I was a kid, I think maybe about 12 years old, we had a video in class, and the video was a little, maybe 5-minute video of the short story. And it has been 50 years probably since I've seen that video, and I never forgot it. So when I opened that book and saw that quote, I was like, oh my God, like he's an Egyptian writer. He's lived all over the world and he's using this Ambrose Bierce quote. So I knew it had some significance. Now, like a moron, I kept reading the book and kind of forgot about it until I got to the ending with Amir. And that's when then I went, oh my God, that is why he had that quote at the beginning. Because basically the story is based on a Southern guy who gets arrested, or actually it's probably vigilante, and he was going to be hung. And so he's on Owl Creek Bridge and they're going to hang him. And in the video and in the short story, what happens is they go to hang him and the rope breaks and he escapes. And all he wants to do is go home to his family. So he takes off running. And of course, they're shooting at him and they're trying to catch him and they can't catch him. And you're just like, oh my God, he's going to make it home. And then all of a sudden, the next scene is boom, he's hung. And you're like, oh shit, that was his longing. That's what he wanted to have happen. But what happened is he died. So when I got to the end of the book and Amir dies, right? I just went, oh shit. He took that amazing short story and crafted, to me, in my top 5 books of my life, he did that, took that short story and created this fable to show us, you know, I'm not even going to say it eloquently, but basically to talk about the refugee crisis, and especially with what's going on in Ukraine right now, how can we not understand that people have a longing? It's like Tarek said, nobody wants to be a refugee, right? Nobody wakes up one day and goes, "Gee, I think I'll leave my home and become a refugee." And so I think it's the idea that there's this incredible longing for home, and Amir doesn't make it. And then I'll let Tara talk about, because when she and I were talking about the book, she's the one that brought up the Peter Pan quote, which I totally blew past.
Yeah, because I know I've read the book twice, right? Or maybe just once, but the first time I read it, the ending is ambiguous, and in my head, I'm like, is he alive? Did he survive? I'm like, I'm not really sure, and it had this like mythic quality to me, and for me, and I couldn't quite figure out the ending in a satisfactory manner for myself. And then Rebecca, one Sunday morning, I think it was, to Rebecca, you sent me this message going, oh my God, and told me the story of this quote, and everything clicked. And I went, that's the ending. And then I picked up the book and I looked back and I'm like, and the Peter Pan quote, I'm like, it's about the boy who never grows old. And I'm like, Amir is the boy who never grows old. And it broke my heart. And it feels silly. It's doing it right now.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I this is part I wish that he could have brought out more in the book or in the debates too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I have to, you're getting emotional and I'm getting emotional, because that's exactly how I feel and why this book hit me so hard, like in my gut, because I just thought this was the most amazing, beautifully written. It is completely fable-like, because even the point at which Vanna like is running away and then it's like she goes up in the air and you're like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
what? Like she's flying, or what is that? But it's like Peter Pan, she was Wendy.
She's Wendy.
And I just thought he crafted the most amazing fable with these elements. And and he even said, because we interviewed him, which was the highlight of my
Mm-hmm.
20, I'm pretty sure will be the highlight of my 2022. But we kind of asked him about the ending because we didn't want to give it away if people hadn't read it yet. And he talked about it. And I just think, he said some people get it and some people don't. And interestingly, Jolene, for you, he said that Margaret Atwood reached out to him and said,
Yeah.
I see what you did there with that."
Yeah.
And he was so funny because he said, "Oh my God, like Margaret Atwood, why would she be reading my book?" And I thought that was so amazing that he was kind of so humble about it. But that's just it. There will be people who will read it, like he said, who have that background and know that story, but the probably 99% of the population won't know that 1860 something Ambrose Bierce short story, right?
Right.
But that's why the book
Yeah.
hit me so hard in the heart. I
Yeah.
loved it.
I'm one of the 99% of people had no clue what that was about.
Yeah.
And I had heard the Peter Pan analogy, and I was like, when I read it, I'm like, I didn't get a Peter Pan analogy. Like, what is he talking about? And then it wasn't until I heard your interview with him that I went, well, this sounds pretty important. Like, I should
Yeah.
probably check this out. So I looked into that story a little bit more, and I was like, okay, had I known this story before I read this book, I think the book would have had, I liked the book. There was nothing wrong with the book. I liked it, but it did not have the same impact that it has had on so many people like yourselves who know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of like, had I known that, like, I do want to do a reread of it now after I maybe read that short story and maybe like look at it through that lens. But yeah, it was totally lost on me. It would not be lost on Margaret Atwood because she's read everything, and
Yeah.
that would totally be something that she would do herself, right? Take a fairy
Yeah.
tale and turn it on its head and give us a new perspective. So yeah, like the fact that he did that and how he did it, now that I understand it, I definitely have more of an appreciation. I also am surprised that it did not get brought up because that's the impact,
Yeah.
and so I don't know if it's just that Tarek doesn't know that story. I would think that in preparation and in conversation with Omar, he probably should know the story, but
But you know what's interesting though? That's just it. I did a lot of research and looked at a lot of reviews and stuff, and even like I think New York Times or whatever, and people didn't bring it up. And I know partly you have to be careful in bringing it up, otherwise you're going to give away the
right.
ending, right?
Mhm.
And also, I think Omar has written it in a way that just because that's what I believe the ending that he dies doesn't mean that he did, because Omar said basically he left it kind of open ended, and that's why he thinks this book will live on a long time because it is open to interpretation. I have a different perspective because I knew a little bit, but I think I was shocked that I couldn't find and then by the way, I just watched a Canada Reads sort of mock debate through a library in Quebec,
Yeah.
and the woman who defended it, it was so funny. They said at the end that people on Zoom could ask a question, and I thought, well, no one's asking this. So I said to her, and she defended it magnificently. She brought up stuff that I hadn't even considered at all. So now I'm like, oh, I totally got to read it. I have to read it again. But my question was, you know, many people don't understand the ending. Do you think that will be a negative in the debates? And she actually said, I didn't really understand the ending. And I thought, wow, she's a professor. And I thought, isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
She's a professor. She defended it so well, but even she didn't get it. So anyway, I just have to, when Tara and I were talking about it, I said, I just have to say this out loud so that it's on the record that I feel like this book has so much more to it and people aren't necessarily seeing that. And I just felt I had to say something. So yeah.
Yeah, and maybe there will be an opportunity tomorrow. I'm hoping that they continue to do what they did today with Suzanne and they allowed her to kind of share a little bit more about her book and why all of Canada should read it. I'm hoping they do the same with Tarek and I think it'd be a good thing if he brings something of that into it.
Yeah.
But I don't know that he will.
Okay, well, I apologize to everyone for going long-winded about it, but I loved this book as I loved it after Tara told me how much she loved it, and then I fell in love with it. I just really needed to at some point just get all of that out. I had to say it all. But we are going to end now, but I do want to say that Jolene will be back with us on Thursday, which is awesome because that will be the day that the winner is announced. So please make sure to listen to to day 3 and definitely day 4 with the winner being announced. So thank you very much. And Jolene, we'll see you on Thursday.
Thank you very much. It's been great to be with you.